Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. How's everyone doing? Everybody say at the same time. All right, good. Amazing turnout, amazing turnout. I know you guys are super excited. And can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, louder. Louder. Okay. So for the speakers, you got to speak into the mic like this. Okay. So yeah, welcome. Oh, we have the clicker. Wait, what happened? That I just pressed the. Am I not recording? Okay, technical difficulties. Please resume your conversations. Oh, I think I probably fucked up the Zoom. Does it happen often? Like it's disconnected? Oh, it's my VPN, I think. Or is it the Wi-Fi? It could be the Wi-Fi. Okay. Did my Zoom, I think my Zoom may have died. 245-377-094, okay. Got it. Let's test it. Let's test it. How do we set up the clicker?
That should work. It's not working now? Is it on? It's working before. Yeah, it was working before.
Maybe I have to pair again.
Wait.
I'm going to try this one next year.
That's so annoying.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Recording. Hello. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, sorry about that. We're good.
Take
We're good.
two. Second time's the charm.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, I think hey, you guys, sit down. Get out of here, Matt.
Down in front.
Catch up with you later. Cool. Well, anyways, yeah, welcome everybody to probably the 6th edition of this meetup. It's been about a year now. So
7.
yeah, glad to see a lot of familiar
8?
faces, new faces. 8, really?
8. Okay.
Oh, thanks, Poor. Cool. So just to start off, I feel like we should maybe introduce ourselves a bit. People in the past have been wondering who we are, the people who are running this meetup. So my name is Jonathan Talmi, and I've been working in data in Toronto for a few years now. I've been worked at Shopify, Instacart, most recently Super, where I was leading the data platform, and recently made the move to an AI company called Cohere, which is really exciting. And so, at Cohere, I am working on getting the best possible data to feed into giant language models so that we can build really amazing AI products using LLMs. And that's basically my whole job, is building a data platform and then ingesting trillions of tokens into it and into these models. So, it's a really big departure from what I was doing previously. And if anybody here is in the ML space, working with LLMs, working with data platforms to support I guess big data or massive data sets of unstructured data, talk to me, come approach me, because a lot of this is new to me, and I'm eager to just learn as much as I possibly can. And I'll hand it over to Lindsay.
Awesome. And my name is Lindsay Murphy. I also recently just changed jobs. Hello. I joined Sakota about a month and a half ago now as head of data. Sakota is a data discovery platform. So Sakota stands for Searchable Company Data. So We're a data vendor in the data space, so it's been a really cool shift. I also have worked in data for a long time in the practitioner area, so this is a big shift for me as well. And my role is focused on helping the company to understand our ideal customer profile, who is data people like ourselves, work on helping to develop the product and ensure that it's the best product that we can make it, and then obviously building out the data platform. So building out our internal data and our internal analytics. Yeah, so if you're interested in hearing more about Skoda, happy to talk about it with you.
And I think Sekoda was one of the first companies within the modern data stack to build an integration with OpenAI and like come up with like analytics or text to SQL analytics, that kind of thing. So it's super cool. You should definitely check it out.
You're better at this than I am.
Cool. So let's get started. Well, actually, first of all, thank you to Financeit
Yes,
for hosting. Round of applause.
Yes.
So Darek, who's talking today, he's going to give a lot more of an overview on what Financeit is and the kind of things that they've been working on. So I'll leave that up to him. But yeah, thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
One housekeeping, if anyone's looking for the washroom, down the hall.
Yeah, down the hall and behind the desk.
All right.
On the
Okay.
right. Yeah. And also, if you leave, you won't be able to get back into the building if you leave after 7 or 8 or something. So
8. Okay.
8. Okay. So just be aware of that. Try not to leave. You can't leave, actually.
And for anyone interested, we are going to the Pint for drinks after this. So if anyone wants to stick around late, we will be doing that.
It'll be great. It'll be great. Cool. So 3 talks on the agenda today. First one is from Darek from Financeit. He's going to talk about the fragile nature of recursion in the modern data stack. Really interesting talk about some challenges that they've had setting up their platform. So really looking forward to that. We have Veronica from Montreal Analytics. I could say a legendary analytics consultancy within the modern data stack ecosystem. And she'll be talking about business event modeling and design, a semi-popular, a pretty popular paradigm for doing data modeling. And finally, we have my friend, Dr. Williams, but I just call him Joseph. Okay. So a bit of a departure from our normal programming, but he's a professor of computer science at U of T, and he's going to be talking about using AI for adaptive A/B testing, for UX design and things like that. And it's going to be really interesting. We may squeeze a break in between, we'll do a pulse check and see how people are feeling. But yeah, I think we are ready to go. So let me actually formally introduce Darek. Okay. Yeah, so Darek is the lead data engineer at Financeit, and he's been that for the past 3 years. He's worked in the data space for 10 years across various industries and managed one of the first production Hadoop clusters in Toronto. Fascinating. Okay, well, Darek,
as far
really
as
excited.
I know.
Here you go. And yeah, thanks a lot.
First of all, thank you for coming. Amazing turnout. I'm glad we supplied enough chairs. There's a lot of work to bring it all here. Thanks for everyone from Financeit that helped set it up as well. Yeah, first I'm going to mention that we are hiring for some data and non-data positions. So if you're looking for a job and data QA engineer, it sounds like something you'd be interested in, or a software developer that has experience with Ruby on Rails, talk to us, let us know. We also have a data engineer position coming soon. We don't have too many details about it yet, but if you scan that QR code, you'll be able to sign up for a mailing list, and we'll reach out to you once we have more details. And a little bit more about Financeit. A lot of people asked me about what we do. So I thought I'm gonna, explain a little bit, but not too long, don't worry. We are a point of sale lender. So we are the opposite of what e-commerce lenders do, like PayBright. We're more in the physical world. So if you go in and you want to buy a jacuzzi, for instance, you'll very likely hear about us and financing options from us. We do real-time approvals. It's all super quick and friendly and mobile friendly and fun to use, and we have great interest rates. But most of all, we have very interesting data problems that we deal with on a regular basis. A little bit about myself. This is me picking up my tool needed to for my first solo cross-Atlantic trip. This is actually how I ended up in Canada. I'm originally from Poland. Then Financeit picked me up because I always pick the right tool for the job. I was also a very serious child. Still a very serious child. Yeah, so I joined Financeit about 3 years ago, and this is what the data, I don't even want to call it a data stack. We basically had 2 separate BI tools running on top of a replica of the production database. It was a bit of a mess, just a ton of PDTs and Looker, persistent derived tables. If you use them, you know them. Failing and data not being transformed the correct way, and no version control. Just a bit of a mess, you know. Financeit was a startup at some point, so that's kind of what happens when you're growing fast. But now, after the 3 years, we are in a bit of a more adult state in terms of our data stack. I think if you've been coming to these talks, you probably heard about most of these companies where we adopted Airflow for orchestration. We're running a proper data warehouse with Redshift. One of my favorite things that we adopted, surprisingly favorite, was DBT. I'll talk about that a bit more. And as we started to grow and realize, I was like, hey, there's so many vendors that can help you move the data around more efficiently. We decided to sign up for things like Hightouch and Fivetran and Datafold. They're really helpful in a daily life of a data engineer. Yeah, and we're not done yet, but I wanted to talk about DBT a bit more because it's a pretty special tool. And I was surprised because when I first started implementing it, I didn't think it's going to have such a instrumental role in changing how the data and the BI team is organized and how they work together. First of all, it really helped turn those nasty PDTs into nicely defined SQL. You kind of have more visibility into your failures. If they do fail, just it's easier to orchestrate very complex transformations that are pretty difficult to do with just pure LookML, because that LookML can turn into some pretty nasty SQL. Obviously, DBT, the way it's set up, it just makes it so easy to test and document your work. Even a simple test of your ID being unique, and it's so easy to set up that, and it can save a lot of pain in the future. It's kind of trivial, but it really saved a lot of time over the years that we've been using it. And most importantly, I find that it transformed our BI team into almost software developers. We kind of stopped doing ad hoc requests. Like the BI team doesn't do ad hoc requests anymore. They use version control for their SQL. They use a release. They have a release cycle. They think about their queries being efficient, which is not always so obvious. And DBT kind of helped facilitate all of that because it's a great framework. If you're not using it and you are working with data, you should definitely look into using it. It's one tool that I could easily recommend to anyone. However, DBT also made us believe that every problem can be solved with SQL, and SQL is the only right way to do things. Recently, DBT started supporting Python as well. If you're using the right warehouse like Snowflake or Databricks, you might be using some Python to build your data layer, although it's not real Python, one could argue. And this surprisingly caused us, or unsurprisingly, caused us some pain. We had this following problem to solve, and as a company that lends money out, it was pretty important for us to know how much interest was accrued on every single loan on any given day. And that calculation is generally pretty easy. It's basically interest rate times, outstanding amount on the loan. However, there is a bit of a curveball thrown at us by our finance team. And maybe I can use the laser thing here. Doesn't work. Oh, I can see it on the screen. That's okay. To calculate interest accrued on a loan today, we need to know what that interest accrued was yesterday. And to know what the interest accrued was yesterday, we need to know what the interest accrued was the day before yesterday, all the way to the first day that the loan was open. And that's because of this little carryover thing. So when we calculate interest, we cut it off and we carry over to the next day. And rounding happens here. And here the number gets cut off. It's all very small numbers. Basically, everything after the 6th decimal place just gets cut off and carried over to the next day, added to the interest accrued. It seems like it's, it will be pennies, even with like a pretty large portfolio, but it actually sums up to a pretty substantial amount over time. And it's a recursive problem that we have to solve with SQL. You don't really have access to, for loops. So recursion it is. And it turns out we got pretty lucky when we had this problem. When we arrived at this problem, Redshift just announced support for recursion, for recursive CTEs, common table expressions. The syntax looks kind of like this. I used the basic example to produce a table with 10 numbers. You've got your base case, select 1, and then you've got your recursive case, select n+1 from numbers when n+1 less than 10. We were able to write the logic for the problem described in the previous slide in with the recursive CTE. It was a very long function. That's why it wouldn't make sense to like put it here. But if you're curious to see it, let me know. We ran it on our test data set and it worked very well. We used a couple of loans that were not super old. We were pretty happy to test it on the full data set. Our full data set was 500,000 loans. That's kind of the portfolio Financeit has. Now it's closer to almost 700,000. Financeit started, I think, in 2011 or 12. So loans dated back to 2012. And as we later found out, we didn't know how big the resulting data set would be. We got over 500 million rows in that final model. So we threw all this data at our recursive query in Redshift, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all. It actually failed pretty quickly, which was nice. We don't have to wait to see this error that said recursive CTE out of working buffers, which who knows what it means. If you tried Googling it, you probably won't get anywhere. We reached out to AWS to ask, like, hey, what is going on? Like, this is failing way too soon. And they told us there is a bug in their recursive CTE, and they'll fix it one day. I don't know if it's fixed yet, but they were kind enough to write us a stored procedure, which if you're a DBT user, you know that stored procedures are not good. They're everything that DBT is against. But at that point, we had no other choice, really. We really wanted to stay within the DBT ecosystem because it's so great. And even though running stored procedures with DBT is not supported, you can hack it to make it work. It's probably hard for you guys in the back to see this code, but I have a little snippet here that basically shows that you can run a stored procedure with DBT as a pre-hook to your model. And all your model does is it selects data from the table that this stored procedure created. And the stored procedure, obviously, it took advantage of for loops, and the AWS devs actually did a good job. Like the function did what it's supposed to do on the test data set. The data was correct, so we're like, okay, let's run against the full data set. And we let it run for 2 days, and we realized that's probably enough. We gave it a fair chance. And we had a pretty sizable cluster, like nothing crazy, but not a small one, not the free tier or anything like that. It was a proper Redshift cluster. At which point, it just became frustrating because if you think about this problem, it's not really that hard to solve with a general, like normal general purpose programming language, right? Like with Python, C, Java, what have you. It's easy to make it parallel because loan doesn't care about other loans. So you can, divide the work across, workers, nodes, whatever, by a batch, and then work away, do its work. And yeah, it's not a, it is a recursive problem, but it's one of those problems that can be easily solved with a for loop. So we figured, you know what, it's time to break out of the DBT ecosystem, which kind of sucked. It was a really sad moment. And we have to write a custom script to get this done. And our current solution is we kept the stored procedure. We kept it for incremental runs. If you use DBT, it has a incremental materialization. So this job runs every day. It adds a day worth of interest accrued for the entire portfolio, and that works very well. That's actually pretty fast. And then for the initial job, or if there is a full refresh that's required, we do have this Python script that sits completely outside of the DBT ecosystem, but we realized we actually didn't need to run it very often. Like since it was created, we probably had to run like 2 or 3 times. So we didn't even incorporate it into our, Airflow pipelines. It was just not necessary. And yeah, it was like a victory and a failure at the same time, because I really didn't want to not use DBT in SQL, but at the same time, that's what we had to do. There was really no other choice. And I think there's somebody from Snowflake here. I would love to hear, if there he is. If support for recursive functions is any better, we'd be willing to give it a try. But anyways, another bonus problem that we had was, turns out that sometimes interest needs to be recalculated for the loan for the entire history because payments go wrong. Like a payment can go bad after 6 months after it gets made, at which case interest calculation can be completely, needs to be basically redone. And DBT has this very interesting insert override config for an incremental model that lets you upsert data into your model. So we made our models both incremental and upserty by having a couple of like interesting like if statements. So if this model gets executed with a list of IDs to reprocess, it'll know to reprocess the entire history, but only for those loans. So it's much easier to do with the stored procedure, or do a regular incremental run if it's the regular daily kind of like job that was scheduled in Airflow. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. Are there any questions?
Oh, wait, one.
Like probably obvious question. Have you found any benefits of using just a native approach? Because like in my opinion, it will be way much better and way much like cheaper in terms of programming hours to just create in Python app and just use it, and this is it.
Absolutely, I agree. However, if you're working with a large data team or a large BI team, having things that fit into the ecosystem makes things easier in the long run. I mentioned things like testing and documentation. That's all standardized across all DBT models. So if somebody goes in and they look at, I want to know how this particular metric, hence interest accrued, gets calculated. And it's not a very technical, that person is not a very technical person. If they see this, they'll have no idea what's going on. But if there is a proper, if there is a regular, DBT pipeline with documentation and the DBT docs page and all the tests, they'll have a much easier time understanding the lineage, where the data comes from, how often does it run, versus having a one-off Python script that kind of runs on a, whenever somebody runs it.
Oh, sorry, thanks. So my question is, you said you do a full refresh on the data
Could you talk a bit closer to that?
Okay, I don't want to shout, but so you said you're going to do a full refresh on the data every day, right? Is that what you?
No, they only daily runs are incremental runs. Full refresh is only necessary when there was something wrong with the logic.
Would it been better if you had set like a CDC, like a change data capture on the table, and just like notice what loans change and then take that and run your model on it, or the recursive function?
So the nature of this problem was it was like almost like it's a problem that has it's batchy in nature, in the sense that we don't want to calculate it whenever there is a payment that comes in or there is a change. We want to calculate it exactly at the beginning of the day.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's kind of would be the same question. When you're running a change data capture, you're basically having a separate table with all the data ready for the batch. So you can just run it whenever you want. You don't need to like set up a streaming like Kafka or something to process it at the same time.
Right. So this is not part of any streaming process. This is part of this. This gets executed after we run our nightly data dump, let's call it, from our production systems into the warehouse. And once that data is all there, we run our DBT pipeline. A lot of our DBT models actually only require to be run once a day, and this is a perfect example of them. It's like a daily model.
Yeah, so the CDC would be like a batch. You don't need to process it right away.
I'm sure that solution would probably work as well.
Also, thank you for the presentation. I didn't understand quite the original problem. Is there a way to come up with the formula to not calculate it recursively, like just to do the mathematical formula on the paper to just perform a calculation on the original data?
That's a very interesting question. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but as far as I know, it's not possible. Can you think of, like, when you thought about it, did you have like a solution, like a solution in mind?
I will take a look at this break and
sure.
I will see what I can.
Are you from like a math background?
Not very mathematical. I was just a software engineer.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's chat after. I'd be interesting to see what you have to say.
Okay, probably the last question.
So just like when you found the Redshift implementation of the recursive CTE wasn't functioning properly, was that like kind of contained within development, or was there any like material business impact that you had to fix or do anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. There was no business impact because we were improving a legacy system. So we relied on the legacy system until this was working in production. So there was no downtime. Like, the legacy system was very slow, cumbersome to work with, but we had a backup. So we were in a pretty comfortable spot like that.
Hey, last question. So
Yes.
I've heard stories about DBT leading to model proliferation, which leads to
what? Sorry?
like model growth, just a ton of models that
Sure.
stack up on top of each other.
Mhm.
And then it leads to surprising cloud bills. Have you found this as an issue? And like, you haven't encountered this yet, or?
We have not encountered it. You mentioned like the cost of running all those models is high.
Like models that stack up onto each other,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
build
yeah.
on each other?
Yeah.
So if you have like recurring jobs that run a ton of models.
Yeah, so this probably really depends on which warehouse you're using and what kind of billing system you have and what kind of nodes. Even within Redshift, you can use different kinds of nodes. Some of them are going to be cheaper for storage. Some of them are going to be cheaper for compute. So you definitely need to, when you're using, depending on how you use DBT, because a lot of people use DBT in very different ways, you'll have to set up your warehouse so that it's optimized for your workload. We do have a lot of models, and we We try to materialize them as tables as well, but storage is very cheap in Redshift. So it's like, why not? And computers compared to some other data warehouses is not too bad. So our warehouse costs are not terrible because of DBT. There might be high because of some other reasons, but I wouldn't put DBT at blame there.
I think someone follows Lauren Balick on Twitter. I actually have one last question. So you said the DBT job fully refresh took multiple days. How long does your Python job take?
The fully refresh with DBT with like SQL, it actually never finished. We never let it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still we're still waiting for the bill from AWS for that one. A very basic Python script took probably around 2 hours, and half of it was just network, like downloading the big file because the input files are pretty large, and it was not parallelized in any way. If it was too slow, we'd probably look into like some sort of maybe like MapReduce or something. But yeah, 2 hours was completely doable considering we only run it once.
Amazing. All right, let's give it up.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have Veronica. Let me just intro Veronica. Okay, so let me get to the intro. Let's see. Is this you?
Oh, I didn't know. I can
Oh, okay. Veronica will intro herself.
Thank you for having me. I'm Veronica. I work for Datatonic Americas, formerly Montreal Analytics. I come from healthcare, so I've only recently embarked in the consulting realm. And today I want to talk to you about the art of data modeling with Beam, which is something I use frequently in my job and I find very valuable. And I hope you can take away something valuable from it as well. So yes, closer to the mic. Yes. Yes, I'm a consultant, analytics engineering. So my team and I work with various companies to deliver value, usually using DBT or Looker, mostly for me, DBT, and a lot of meetings to get to the bottom of what our clients need. A quick overview of Datatonic Americas. So we're a full stack data consultancy and a premier partner of Snowflake in North America. We have partnerships with GCP, DBT, Looker. We help organizations on their data journey from the beginning to the end, anywhere in between. We try to deliver rapidly, and we try to give strategic advisory and hands-on development and enablement. So sessions, if some company has Looker and they don't know how to use it, we'll give them training for it and things like that. And a little bit of an overview of where we bring value. Anywhere you can see here is where we bring value, whether it be the transformation part here with the DBT, the ingestion, BI and reporting, and more recently, because we've been acquired by Datatonic, we have ML and AI capabilities that they have been growing on the other side of the pond in the UK as well. And here are some of our alliances. I mentioned our big partners over there, but we have tech alliances that were also mentioned by a previous speaker, Fivetran, Sigma, Atlan, and all those. So let's get into the talk. So what is Beam? I use an acronym in the title, which is a little rude. So I'll define it for you right away. Business Event Analysis and Modeling is Beam. My hands are full. So I make sure I don't miss anything. My bad. Okay. Business event analysis and modeling. It's only a small part of what is found in this book, Agile Data Warehouse Design. And it's a book that we're all required to purchase when we first start working at now Datatonic, because it's at the heart of how we deliver value. Being a consultant, as I mentioned previously, I get to start a new job every few months with a new client. You have to get to know what the business is. One a client might be in real estate, another one might be in retail or healthcare. So when you start a new job, especially in data, you have to get to know the infrastructure, the source data, just the business itself. Who are your clients? Like our real estate company, their client might be Amazon, and they may be selling warehouses. These are all things that we need to find out about, and we use Beam as a way to do this quickly up front so that we can deliver value right away, so that we don't get stuck in the weeds trying to figure these things out. I hope by the end of today, you'll see that you can actually use it not just as a consultant, but even as someone who works at a company and has a stakeholder come up to them, asking them for some information, but it's from a department that you've never heard of and you don't know what they're doing. So let's get right into it. Why did I choose to speak about it? Because it helps you. So if you read the book, you'll get to know what comes before Beam. There's model storming sessions where you get in a room and get everybody involved and think about things. And this allows you to involve the right people. Through a very simple framework, you can ask the right questions so that you can quickly, pardon me, so you can quickly get to the bottom of what you need to build. And most importantly, you set a good foundation for a model. What was mentioned previously in the question, which is building models on top of other models, it helps you avoid this by asking questions up front. And so this is what a business typically looks like. It's similar to the previous slide, but you have your source data like Google Analytics, Zendesk, Salesforce, and usually you have ingestion, Fivetran, automated, or you can have custom ingestion pipelines into a data warehouse like Redshift, Snowflake, BigQuery. It gets transformed and it goes on to various locations, mostly BI and reporting, but machine learning and data science could be starting to pick up more. And what you want to keep in mind whenever building a model is you want to be building a business-centric model rather than a source-centric. So a business-centric model meaning that if you have a customer key across various sources, you want to get all the information about that one customer key in the one model rather than be swayed by the fact that, well, my Google Analytics data is so large. It's much easier if I just do this separately. Down the line, I think it can become problematic. So this is the simple framework that we use, and it's just 7 questions, the 7 W's. So who, what, when, where, how many, why, and how. So, my hands are full. All right. All right. So Beam, I just want to be sure to say this because it's important. Beam, it's important to note that Beam gets BI stakeholders to think dimensionally, essentially. By asking these questions, you're asking the stakeholders questions that they will eventually be asking of the data warehouse. And although these questions haven't come up for them yet, it's good to think of them ahead of time before you build a model, because they will come up. And rather than building a new model when they do come up and having a bunch of models, you deal with it right off the get-go, and you have a flexible framework or a flexible model that will withstand the test of time. Inevitably, it will change, of course, but at least these changes won't be as great as they would be if you were to just go request by request through it. And so when I sit down with a client, or if you were to sit down with your stakeholders, usually I start with an event table just to get them comfortable with answering these types of questions. So like the who being like a customer, we often have e-commerce clients. A customer orders a product on an order date for a delivery on a delivery date, and you just go through this one event with them. And more importantly, at the end there, the why. Why does this customer order this product? Was there an email sent to them for a promotion that would incentivize them? Or was there a sale happening that would incentivize them to do this? And here you can expand and really think about the data available and the questions that could potentially be answered that are pertinent at this very moment. And lastly, the how are typically your keys. And once we go through one event like this, we typically move on to a canvas, which you can add on top of that first initial event more whys or who's or what's, until you have a pretty good picture of what this business is about, but more importantly, not just what they're about, but what do they have that they're tracking. And it's also, usually it takes us an hour. Of course, and this hour flies by really quickly, but you can also do it in several sessions. But I find that once I have this canvas, I can go on Data Grip and start asking questions of the data. And I feel like I have a good starting point from which to go. And I feel like it also lowers the amount of meetings that I'll have to have, because now we had this big talk about it. So in short, how can you benefit from today's talk? So I believe that having a framework in place through Beam can give you a starting point for your data exploration and building those models that need to be created, which leads to enhanced agility. It's a lot less back and forth, I find. At least we try to do a lot less back and forth so that we can dive into the part where we deliver value, which is the hands-on keyboard part of the job. And it'll lead to improved understanding of business processes, not just from your end where you're understanding how the business works, but also from the end of the client or stakeholder, because they may not think of the business in the sense of the data. And I think it's a great exercise for everyone involved to think of it in that way, especially if they're hoping to derive value from that information that they're collecting. And most importantly of all, it leads to reusable data models because you've thought of everything up front. You can be sure that if something comes up down the line, you can probably go there and you'll find that column that you need and pull what information that the stakeholder is looking for. And a note on the reusable data models, it'll probably lower your Snowflake credit usage or Redshift, whatnot. So it allows you also to better improve the model runtime because it's all in one place and have all the tests. Just much more streamlined is my opinion of this. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much for the talk. I just had a question. I don't know if you see this as a consultant because you're kind of brought in after the decision's been made, but I was just wondering if you generally run into situations where from the business side of things, they're sort of maybe 2 steps removed from the data warehouse where they're accessing it through some BI tools. So how do you kind of explain or describe the business value of having an organized data warehouse, whereas for a business stakeholder, they might not see the benefit so much as like maybe a data analyst or data engineers would.
That's a great question. There's been instances where we weren't successful in conveying the importance, and because it's such a high level approach for companies that are really large, it's almost impossible to do it on a whole business level. You have to break it up into departments. But yeah, I've been in instances where we tried to run a Beam session 5 times and failed because there was no buy-in from the stakeholders that were too far removed. But I'm thinking that's a 25,000 person company. So maybe this is better for smaller entities or companies that are siloed into their departments.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. I'm just curious, when you run some of those sessions, is that with people from different departments, like say the marketing and the ops and the sales departments, or do you just run them for a particular department? So you're like marketing analytics or sales analytics?
Yeah, thanks. Usually it's within a department. So we might have a client that we've already done work for, but there's a new engagement that they'd like to start that might be unrelated to what we were working on. Let's say Google Analytics. So then we're working with the team that's exclusively using that data. So it's helpful both when you're engaging anew and when you're starting a new project as well. That's why I thought it would translate well to somebody who's already an existing company, because there's often these instances that come up.
I have a question. So you, as a consultant, you probably see a lot of similar companies. You said you see a lot of e-commerce companies. Have you built internal tooling like templating to almost like spin up new Beam projects, new DBT projects that like kind of automate a lot of the work of doing like building a DBT project or building your data model?
Not for Beam, although we've given our clients access to the canvas that I showed you. Sometimes they fill it out on their own, but it's not as useful as sitting down together. But of course, we've automated the parts of the DBT setup, like staging tables in batch. If there's lots of them to do, we have an internal script for it, but we also, there's a DBT Coves script that's pretty great to use for staging tables en masse. We have an internal automation initiative that, yeah, we're trying to save time by not doing repetitive work at any stage.
Cool.
It's kind of like an extension of the question, but how do you handle naming conventions for clients? Because everyone, like every client has their own ways of naming stuff on Google Analytics or other softwares. How do you handle that? And what's a good way to avoid like having one analyst trying to figure out, okay, this is how they name this campaign, for example, and just kind of like do it a little bit more automated?
We always go with the recommendation from DBT with regards to naming and folder structure. If there's already existing models that are named in a way that's not great, we usually just leave it. Whatever new we create with best practices in mind. If it's within the scope of our engagement to go in and refactor their projects, then that's what we'll do. But typically, yeah, we just, whatever you see on the DBT website as in the naming convention, that's what we do. So stage underscore source double underscore.
It's more like the data itself. Like, for example, when they name, let's say, for example, a campaign on Google Analytics 2023, I don't know, e-commerce, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. So like one other client would name it like 2023 X and then Facebook. So how would you like take care of these things as they come into your data warehouse. So you avoid like having one analyst trying to figure out this is how they name their campaigns on Google Analytics.
Typically, we don't have admin rights to the warehouse. It's usually on their end. We receive the data as is, and we can rename it in the model. And we always do try to do that, like so that's more easily understandable. But yeah, not within the actual warehouse itself. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job. Great job. Okay, let's take 5. Let's do a 5, and we'll come back for the final talk.
And so I know this is an overwhelming slide. Let me set expectations. I'm a university professor, and this is way too much information. I know that. 25 minutes of like a fire hose. Be prepared for the fire hose. It is coming, okay?
It's gonna
and
be
just
great.
Make sure you capture something. You don't have to get everything, but just get enough. Like, and the key thing, you know, is I'm gonna give you all free consulting till 9 p.m. Open that, type into your mobile browser, tiny.cc JQA, Joseph question answer. Any question you write into there before 9 p.m., I'm going to respond to you.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. Yeah. I'm super excited for this next talk. Joseph directs the Intelligent Adaptive Interventions Lab at U of T, right? At U of T, which transforms everyday user interfaces from emails and text messages to websites and prompts in apps into intelligent, perpetually improving systems. They were recently recognized as the grand prize winner of the $1 million X Prize because of their toolkit and methods for AI-driven experimentation. Congratulations, Joseph.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, the intro is way too long. I'm just gonna say, Joseph is one of the most fascinating people I know, and we've been friends for years. And I'm really excited for this next talk. It's gonna be information dense, but don't fear. It's going to be really accessible and interesting for everybody. So let's go. Give it a hand.
Thanks so much, everyone. And if you pay attention halfway through, there's going to be an interlude where I'm going to deliver 30 seconds of this talk while riding an electric unicycle, once you pay attention. I will say John is one of the most persuasive people I know because it was my birthday yesterday and I'm on vacation this week and I'm here at this meetup talking to you all. But I'm here because I really want to learn more about the business world. Like, what do you all do every day? What are the problems you solve? You know, this making money thing. What do you all do with it exactly? And I mean, I know it's crazy, but for me, the idea of just trying to make money is very interesting. Like, it's not something I think about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a professor, right? So you all tell me, how could you all use research we give away for free to like make money? And that's why you're getting free consulting. You know, I'm easy to rip off, you know? Okay, so right now, if you can just pop open their mobile phones, just type into your web browser, tiny.cc JQA. Just type into your web browser on your mobile phone. I'll give you 15 seconds. And then try and edit that using Google Docs on your phone. You can like write questions in here, the free consulting I mentioned. You can just add comments or advice on the talk, like Joseph talks slower, or next time you give this talk, emphasize this, throw out that other stuff. Or you can put information about your LinkedIn or website. Like I'm here to learn about people and only 3 people ask questions. But through technology, what can we do? Anyone in here can just type in there anytime you want a question, whether it's free consulting or body talk. You can put your website or LinkedIn in there and say, Joseph, I wish that you would reach out after to do X, Y, Z, ABC. I may not do it, but I'll ask someone from my lab to go to that Google Doc. How many people have that open on their phone and clicked edit? Tiny.cc JQA. I'll give you all 10 seconds. Who else has it open? Just put your hand up. Okay, great. Who's clicked edit to try and edit it? To see the pain of editing Google Docs on a mobile phone. Can you all edit? Can you type anything in? No. You need to use the app. Okay, someone with the app. So you might have to download the app to do it. Or convince someone by you to do it. I guess you can email me. Just Google me. You'll be able to get my email. Okay, well, that was good. We tested that out. We experimented and we found out most people don't have the Google Docs app. Okay, so I experimented and I tested it. I think people there can see, but others can't. So I'm gonna read it out. And throughout this talk, anytime I'm going fast, just do this. You said you would, and the two Trinidadians in the back said they would as well. Every 2 minutes, you can just do this, because I'm almost definitely going too fast. Great, so everyone pops open this idea. So free consulting till 9 p.m. What are problems in your job every day or your business that you wish I would solve for you? You don't really know what I do that well, so just tell me your problems. I'll tell you which ones I'm interested in solving. But I would say that either I or people I know are experts in psychology. So there are millions of academic papers that have this solution to your problem. What's your problem? You don't know where they are, and you don't have time to read them. That's what me and my colleagues are here for. So psychology, human-computer interaction, how do you design technology to help people? Artificial intelligence, whether it's ChatGPT or reinforcement learning or recommender systems, and other approaches, statistics, and so on. And the title of this talk supposedly is, how do we enhance user experience using AI, HCI, human-computer interaction, and psychology for supercharged A/B experimentation? But I have a hint for you. Every single thing you're all doing could benefit from A/B experimentation. You just don't know it yet. There's nothing any of you are doing that can't benefit from A/B testing. For example, when I say A and B, I'm obviously mean A, B, C, D, E. You could do the whole alphabet. So does action A versus B versus C impact people's behavior? For example, right now, I just A/B tested name tags, right? Everyone is A. I had 2 of them. That was an experiment. How will it impact behavior? Who will talk to me? Who will avoid me? Advertising and marketing. What content A versus B will get people to read emails, to click links to buy products? Communication. I just spoke to someone at Financeit just before, and he said, well, Joseph, what words A or B would I use to talk to my team members, to communicate in a way that that person is going to understand me and be motivated? What words do you use on a website, in an email, in a meeting, when you're networking, when you give an introduction? Another area we work on is reflection. What question A versus B do you ask to help someone make a decision, to understand you, to manage conflict, to connect with someone else? What are other behaviors you wish you could improve or personalize interventions for? Does that make sense to everyone? Another angle here is experiments are here to tell us what we think works but doesn't. What are things I or my business does now that we think work, but experiments would show are just a waste of time? Isn't that great? Tell me what I'm doing wrong, and I'll just stop doing it. Free value. How can we be more efficient through technology? How to incorporate AI like GPT, LLMs to enhance what I and others do? We can give you insight on like what could be outsourced versus what you have to augment. And especially what software and conceptual frameworks are able to help me experiment in everyday life, in my work. And there's more on my website there. And if you have questions, we've got the Google Doc, but also we have a contact us form there. You can follow me on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. And probably LinkedIn is the best bet right now. So everyone did that already. So in terms of an introduction, John lied to you all. No, that's not true. I'm a professor in computer science. That's who pays me. But because experimentation applies to every area across the university, I'm collecting cross appointments like Pokemon. So I'm also in psychology. I have 2 PhD students in psychology. We publish papers in that area: cognitive, social, clinical, health, relationship, organizational psychology, statistics. So I have 2 PhD students in that as well. How do we come up with ways to analyze data more efficiently with less errors? Mechanical industrial engineering, economics, and then the Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence. And what ties all that together is intelligent adaptive interventions. How do we intervene to help people to change their behavior through technology? And so this is some of the expertise that we have that you can draw on or tap or challenge us. And so I think we can give you expertise or our partners in human-computer interaction. So what are techniques for using technology like behavior design that most companies don't know about yet? When we publish a scientific paper, what does that mean? It means we have to produce knowledge that no one has had before. It might be very simple knowledge, but it's new knowledge. So when you think of UX researchers or designers, they're great. You should hire more of them. But they're using techniques from 5, 10, 20 years ago. We bring in techniques that are published like just a year or 2 ago, and you all don't even know about them. So they give your business a huge competitive advantage. And the biggest thing is not just my papers. It's, Joseph, here's a problem I've solved. Of the 500 researchers you know, who can help me? And I can point you to someone at Stanford who told me, Joseph, I'm sure I can make a lot of money off this, but I don't care. I just put it online for free. Just find that and you can make money instead. And he'll clap you on the back too. Psychology. Psychology is everything, right? Cognitive psychology, social, health, behavioral economics. What are the myths versus the reality of how to guide people's decisions, their attitudes, their judgments? How do we help them? How do we help you understand, reflect, and learn? How do you help your employees or your customers be happy versus in conflict? AI and ML, ChatGPT, other large language models, reinforcement learning for adapting interfaces and interventions. So you hear a lot about deep learning, but reinforcement learning is really the idea that when you take actions, for example, send email A or B or C, how do we learn over time which emails work for who? How do we personalize? And then they also apply to recommender systems, like recommending items or suggestions or ideas. And statistics, how do you analyze data in less time with fewer mistakes? But there are many other things. So just kind of throw ideas at me and I'll say, that's not interesting, I can't help, or talk to this person. That makes sense? And just to put in the back of your mind, here are examples of like 3 of the hundreds of examples. Advertising and marketing content. We have done no research like that's actually published papers in this area and helped make people money, but everyone keeps saying, Joseph, you should just quit your job and become a millionaire. I'm not going to, but you can become a millionaire through us. So how do you experiment? Which advertising content is going to have an impact? People run A/B tests all the time, and very politely, they could do it 20 times better. How do you use psychology theories to design it? How do you involve new techniques from AI to experiment more quickly? How do you run a qualitative A/B experiment? Instead of just looking at metrics like people clicking, how do you actually run experiments to get interesting data about how it's going to feel to someone to get this ad? Reflection prompts. Everything in life is a question, right? If you're coaching your employees, how do we A/B test what questions you ask someone at the beginning of a one-on-one meeting with the manager? How do you A/B test what questions you ask someone when you're like, why on earth did they do that? Why on earth did you do that? You can try it, but then the other prompts. What was your thought process behind that? Could you explain to someone else how you could have done it better? The exact way you phrase the prompts for different people is going to have a huge impact on whether they work with you and succeed. And of course, and here's, yes. Another example is chatbots, right? So that is exploding now. But honestly, as big as we think ChatGPT is, I think that compared to what it could be, it's really disappointing. Why is that? Because when you construct a chatbot, there's just one version of it. Every single sentence in that chatbot could be an A/B experiment. LLMs are fantastic at generating hundreds of options, but what do they do with all that power? They give you one version. And I can tell you, they are not running A/B experiments in real time. What they could be doing, or what you could be doing in your business, is use a ChatGPT or LLM and generate multiple versions, and then run an A/B experiment using frameworks like ours, which would automatically figure out. Some people like, done, great. Some people like, tell me more. Some people want to be asked a question. So you can actually take any chatbot and experiment with any components of it to constantly improve and personalize. Even if you have 10, 20 users, you can do this with a qualitative A/B comparison. If you have hundreds or thousands, then you can use machine learning methods to do it. Does that make sense? Here's one example of a tool that my students have been building. We built several of these, but this is the best one so far, I think. Imagine you had to actually A/B test a content in just seconds. Like, you shouldn't have to work hard. You could plug it in here. This is an email that I had to send to my students before the exam. And what's going on here? I just select a set of text and I click and I make ABC. So I write my first email, and then all I do is just choose a set of text and I click a button and I make 3 different ways of saying the same thing. And now when I'm done, that process can take 30 seconds, a minute. I can click a button and then that gets A/B experimented with. Some students get A or B or C, or if I want, I can send it before my students to like Amazon Mechanical Turk or Prolific, and actually get other people to give input on, how does this land with you? How do you feel if you receive this? Is there a better idea? So do you all see how these tools, by making it easy for anyone to A/B test, can change the way you communicate in email or on websites? So if you want to use a tool like this in your business, your setting, come to us and talk to us and tell us your problems. How do we build this tool so it helps you in your setting? Is everyone clear on how this works? Basically, just select a bunch of text and you start making different versions and you send it to colleagues or friends and they add therein. When you next disagree with someone, do we do A or B or C? Great, experiment, see what's going to work. And I'll quote someone who's famous for, I don't know if you all know, some people would claim the reason Google and Meta and Amazon are where they are is A/B experimentation. Ron Kohavi has a great term. He's like, instead of trusting the hippo, use an experiment. What's the hippo? Yes, but also highest paid person's opinion. Don't trust the hippo, experiment. Because instead of making decisions in business by the highest paid person's opinion, let's run an experiment and see. Sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're wrong. And either way, the business is going to save a ton of money. Another person said, if you could increase your revenues by 1%, that's a huge amount, right? If A/B experiments help you figure out that you can get 1% more clicks, I mean, that's a huge boost to your income. If you make your employees 1% happier every year, they're less likely to leave. So what I'm going to do is try and run you all through. It might take a bit of time, but John will signal me when I have to just jump off. I'm going to present you all what we presented when we won the X Prize. It's basically talking about all these concepts within the framework of education and learning. If you all care about that, great. If you don't, just keep asking yourself and keep writing in the Google Doc, how do I apply this to the things I care about? To marketing, to conflict management, to A/B experimenting with what I'm going to say with my family members when they next really annoy the hell out of me. Just think of how you can apply this to your setting. So then you read that. This is basically, you'll be delighted to know. Not sure, I'm recording my talk. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Your questions will get captured, but I can pause if you don't want to. But I think John's recording, so I'm not sure that helps. So you all be delighted to know this. This is a US prize. And somehow a Canadian, well, what goes on in the newspaper, we'll see. But it was a Canadian-led team because I and my team led this with Carnegie Mellon, North Carolina State. And so aren't you all great? To transform the future of US education through experimentation, a Canadian-led team won that prize. I was initially not saying that, but we need some publicity for this. So maybe that will wake them up, make them pay attention when there's a bit of scandal. So post that on Twitter. Canadian-led team tells the US how to run the future of education. So here's the talk we gave for the next prize. We said, we have a vision. Let's take any resource and turn it into an intelligent agent that's like our best teachers. Any resource implemented is what we call a MOOClet. It's our software framework that we implement. You can make the explanations a MOOClet on your website. You can make emails a MOOClet. Any resource implemented as a MOOClet enables perpetual enhancement and personalization by integrating collective human intelligence with artificial intelligence. You all remember that application lets you edit emails or website content. Every one of you all could add your collective human intelligence in. And we could use AI to figure out which versions work for who in what circumstances. Examples, explanations of online resource, emails to manage stress before tests, or elements of GPT-based chatbots, like I said previously. We want to give tools to democratize experimentation. Anyone here should be able to walk out. Your parents, your grandparents should be able to experiment with what they're doing every day. And that's enabled in part by adaptive experiments that use AI and ML. So you design the conditions, the versions, send them out, and then a system figures out what's working for who or what's not working. And our main application areas have been education and mental health. That makes sense? So one of my colleagues said I'm going to a business event, so I have to wear a suit, but I think he was sorely mistaken. Okay, so I'll dive in. So this was given for the X Prize, so an education audience. So I A/B tested my titles. How can we make today a turning point in using A/B experiments to help people? Or how do we reimagine A/B experiments for professional enhancement personalization? Where these MOOClets, if you make the explanation on a website a MOOClet, or the email you sent to someone a MOOClet, it's an engine for integrating collective human intelligence with artificial intelligence. And so University of Toronto, Intelligent Adaptive Interventions Lab with Carnegie Mellon, Open Initiative, and North Carolina State. And these are faculty members and also colleagues who are experts in statistics and AI, as well as me, Anna Raffi, Sophie Villa, and Nian Diliu. And PhD students who are involved. So here are examples of it. Thanks a lot. Yeah, interrupt at any point in time where things need to be clarified or how it can improve. No one said slow down yet, which is a mistake because I'm definitely going too fast. You're supposed to just slow down. I think you speak quickly, so I'm good for you, but there's 20% of the audience here who for sure it's too fast. Okay. So here's what we've A/B experimented with, in our 30, 40 different papers. Exclamations on a web page, such as what the quadratic formula is. Messages sent by a conversational agent or chatbot, and then emails sent to students. And as I said, tiny.cc/JQA, write in questions, comments, anything at all. When your attention starts to drift, you can just start typing in there. So here's the vision we want to have. How do we take any piece of technology and make it a perpetually improving system, like a real teacher? Think about online homework versus the best teachers you've had. And so what my TEDx talk was about. In online homework, like most of our websites, interaction already changes. If you attempt a homework problem, there's an answer, you might get the same explanation, but you get it over and over again. All 100 of you would get the same explanation. But that's not how it works with a really good teacher. A really good teacher varies the interaction. Like they give different explanations. They might try explanation 1 or 2 or 3. And they're experimenting. Maybe not in a systematic way, but they are experimenting. You're experimenting every time you open your mouth and say something to someone. And they can try and learn what works. So they might find out what works better on average. Or they might personalize. For example, explanations that emphasize the procedure are really helpful when someone's learning it for the first time. But for those students who can do the procedure, they need an explanation of why that's the right procedure to apply, so they can deepen their knowledge and know how to apply it. So how can we take any resource, an online homework problem, an explanation, a question, and make it like a real teacher, a self-improving system? And this is where our approach comes to human AI-driven adaptive experimentation. So we have to automatically add and remove versions or conditions and personalize content over time. So a typical A/B comparison, you would assign 50-50, and you would just run it for like 500 people and then stop when the statistician tells you to. Or ideally, at a fixed predetermined stopping rule time. But what if we reimagine it? We do it in novel, innovative ways that might feel unusual to the industry. What if you run an A/B comparison, and after you look at the outcome, for example, if you give students explanations or people on a website, you could ask them to thumbs up or down whether it made sense, whether it was compelling. Well, after 50 people get explanation A and 52 get explanation B, maybe you'll find that it seems like there's a slight preference towards A. Now, that may or may not be reliable, but you can adapt and say, well, let's assign A to X% of people, 60%, 80%. That number will be based on what's the probability, based on the data so far, that explanation A is going to get more people to understand. Does that make sense? Instead of doing 50 and keeping it fixed, you can adapt it over time as you get more and more evidence that something is good. Now, why is that useful? Because as something's getting better, you can phase out what's not looking promising and add new versions in. So this totally reimagines what an A/B comparison is. It's not, comparing your idea against your idea and we're done. It's let's make the explanations on your website of what you do, the explanations on your LinkedIn profile, a MOOClet, the system that keeps A/B testing. It's perpetually improving and enhancing what's being said. Try LinkedIn content on A and B and C, and you phase in what's working, but then you keep adding new things. Sometimes you bring back old things because it might work well in this new context. So it's a way of instrumenting software so you can constantly test out ideas and you never stop experimenting. And why is that especially important? Because there's not one right answer. Personalization. Someone who's coming to hire you for a job, you want to see different versions based on whether they're hiring you for software or they can promote you to a manager position. So you want to keep testing out ideas and figuring out how to personalize them to different profiles of people. Do you all kind of get that vision about how you take a software component, you make it a booklet, and allows you to keep experimenting and improving over time? Sure. How about you say it and I can choose? So how do you deal with a cold start problem? You have many ideas and options. What's your problem at the beginning? Well, currently what people do is they just do 50-50. But here's what's super exciting about this. If you and your hippo, highest paid person's opinion, disagree, right? Then you say, well, listen, how about we start this off with giving you more weight? If the hippo says B is better than A, then, well, okay, how sure are you? Let's put 80% of people in B and 20% in A. So you start off with some advantage, but then you can still use machine learning to figure out what's actually working. The hippo was a rude example. But if 4 of you disagree, write down your prior beliefs and encode them into the algorithm so it starts off favoring something. And that's perfect because if you're right, you converge quickly. But if you're wrong, at least you experimented. The big problem is that we don't do things in this continuous way. We do it like I'm an experiment or not. That's a false dichotomy. That's like nature versus nurture. We want to figure out where's the in-between. Does that make sense? Yeah, how frequently would you make the adjustment? That's a great question. Let's put that in advanced questions for after. That's a great point. So I'm not sure I'm here, but you said like maybe the main barrier is that people know it could be useful, but it's not easy to do it. So what is our value proposition? I think there's like 10 of them. But yeah, and honestly, to be honest with you, I'm a researcher. My job is to produce knowledge. I don't know what my value proposition is. I don't know what you need in sales or marketing. So you'll have to kind of tell me your problems and I'll figure it out. But that is one value proposition. So our MOOClet software infrastructure, it was developed at Stanford and then Harvard and Singapore and now Toronto. It basically is a free open source software infrastructure that shows you how you could actually either use it or honestly, once you see how it's set up, it shows you how you can implement your own pretty quickly so that you can actually have a general purpose infrastructure that allows traditional A/B testing, prior knowledge, expert weighted A/B testing, machine learning driven A/B testing, and personalization. And we actually got an NSF grant, National Science Foundation, to make these tools available, make the MOOClet available to tons of researchers. So it's being built out. So you all could take a look at software, adapt it, or use it. Another value proposition is we do build specific tools for domains. So if you remember that slide where I showed there was an email and you could add A/B tests easily, we build tools like that for emails, for websites, for advertising. So for example, if a company came to us and said, okay, we will hire you all to do X, Y, Z on advertising, we would consider that. It depends on what they want to do and if we're interested in it, and if I can get my PhD students interested in it. But they could come and say, build us a specific tool for this. And we could say, sure, we built 3 tools already. Here's the infrastructure. We can build another one for this domain, like A/B testing ads or something else. And we could say, here's how it goes above and beyond what Facebook gives you, or LinkedIn gives you, or Google gives you. It's super general. It's honestly, it's too general. I should have built that 10 years from now. It's actually the solution to a problem that people haven't even realized they have yet. It basically lets you do A/B testing anything, algorithms, software, websites, emails, text messages, entire applications. That's a great question.
Can we save some of these questions for the end?
Advanced question.
There's a lot of content to get through here.
Yeah, good advanced question. So here's how the MOOClet helps you. You take an embed picture component and you make it a MOOClet, and that makes this bit of text. This is on Khan Academy. You could put on your website an intelligent agent, because all of a sudden now you have APIs and data structures to keep adding in different ideas. So that was idea 1. You can add idea 2. just by a simple API call or by typing into that application I showed you earlier. You keep adding ideas over time. So you perpetually add and test and personalize ideas. So you have an adaptive versus a static curriculum in education. And you can apply it to your own setting. And so what's exciting about this, again, back to this app, is that any teacher, student, or social behavioral scientist or member of the public can now suggest and capture different ideas that will then be entered to test. Within your company, it could be an app that lets people suggest a range of ideas. So you crowdsource knowledge from people, including your customers and your stakeholders. Think of it like people say in a kindergarten, everyone has to do something. Imagine that anyone can be involved in collaboratively designing content for ads or features of software. Here's one example of what comes out of this. This normally takes decades, right? We want to speed that up so it takes like 6 months or a year. Students are stressed before a test. Have you all been students? Were you all ever stressed before a test? And nothing you could say to yourself or your parents or your teacher would say to you would really calm you down, right? They're like, relax, you'll be fine. Thanks. Well, it turns out that based on some research by psychologists, we built on that there is actually a way of phrasing things that can be very powerful. Some of the time for some people. As you come here for your test, I'm sure you're feeling stressed and anxious. I want to let you know that being stressed during an exam can actually help you perform better. That's a weird thing. Don't worry about fighting that stress down. It can actually help you perform better because you're summoning resources and energy to focus. Well, that sounds nice, but does it make a difference? Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. We decided to be ambitious and build on the research by Shannon Brady and others, and look at the impact of showing this message before a test, a midterm test. And we give the students as a voluntary activity, so they may not have done it well, they may not have done it at all, and it only took 5 minutes. We wouldn't expect to see an increase in grades, right? If I have a test, what are you going to do to me in 5 minutes to make me increase my grade? Are you going to cram like 200 hours of programming into my head in 5 minutes? Most things don't impact grades that easily. That's why we chose it. Not because grades are the best thing in the world, but because it's a pretty hard metric to move. Well, I was pretty surprised. This is published at CHI, Computer-Human Interaction. That's our main conference in computer-human interaction. And what's interesting here is, if you look at on average, there is an increase between the test score from 76% to 80%. And it's a bigger effect for first year versus upper year students. This is shocking. A 4% increase from 5 minutes. Like, what else could I have done with them in 5 minutes to help them? I think if I'd even show them the answers on the test, I'm not sure if it would help this much to get a 4% increase. That's going students from like a B to an A minus. Again, if your company can increase revenue by 1%, that's worth a lot, right? So that's a nice illustration of what it can buy you. So when we talk about adaptive A/B experiments, I'll give you all a brief teaser. An adaptive A/B experiment changes which options students are assigned to during the experiment. So we use artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms, as well as human judgment, because we're always looping human beings into the loop. We're trying to humanize AI. We're trying to involve people in it, because doing AI on its own is just not really likely to work well in the long run. People need to monitor the algorithms, understand this is working fine, but you have to divert it. Or in this case, it's going to break down. Here's an example of an adaptive experiment. Change from 50-50 assignment, 50% of people get explanation A or B, to 70% get explanation A, 30% get B, 80-20. So you keep phasing in proportion to your prior knowledge, in proportion to what you know, so that you can remove options that aren't working well and give better options. Does that make sense, how that way of approaching it lets you test ideas more quickly? And also, you should make it possible to add in new options as better ideas emerge. When you decided to launch your product, I mean, how many of you have done this? This sounds like a great idea, this particular app. We launch it, and as soon as you launch it, even before the first users come in, you're like, actually, I wish I could go in and tweak something. I wish I could explain to them how to use the app better. I wish I could actually bury all that text I put somewhere else. This kind of Mooklet framework embeds components of your app that can constantly change after deployment. Instructions, questions, interface components. But here's the thing, it has to be built in before. You can't do it after. They're huge, some of the biggest platforms in the world. I look at them and I say, if you all had only implemented this way from the start, you'd have been fine. But now you have to restructure your entire code base. And I know because I've done it myself. In 2014, I laughed at the Joseph who implemented experiments. He was an idiot. Like, he didn't know what he was doing because he didn't use the Mooklet framework. He was doing it the traditional way. So he couldn't personalize. He couldn't use AI and ML. He couldn't change the algorithm he was using. He couldn't put human beings into the loop. And the kind of key idea here is you can also probabilistically, I mean like with proportions, personalize by delivering different options more often based on certain characteristics like level of knowledge and lots of other stuff. So here's what adapting looks like. Think of about 8 minutes left. Actually, I promise you all are actually paying attention. I'm surprised at how many people are looking. So I will now deliver 20 seconds of this talk on electric unicycle as an interlude. So this is where John calls the insurance people. So what does it mean to adapt? You assign explanations in proportion to the evidence that they're better. So you start out with 50-50 as manual assignment using human judgment. And then you can actually change that probability over time. For example, if you saw that there was evidence that one is better than the other, you could then change it to actually looking at quantitative and qualitative metrics and change it over time to 90-10. You all probably totally missed all of that, but I'll say it one more time. Well, what's funny is I've never done that before in my life. Now I have, and I have some data. So I'll say it one more time. You start off explanations 50-50, right? And you may get some quantitative metrics like people liking it more, or qualitative. For example, your first user might say, I was confused about why this was being said, but I like the image here. Then you could actually adjust from 50-50 to 90-10. And the idea here is you are making a bet that based on data you've seen so far, whether qualitative feedback or metrics, the explanation A has a 9% chance of being better than explanation B. Does that make sense? And now, because you're phasing something out, you can also add in explanations. For example, A, B, and C. So you can keep adding new ideas on the fly as new ideas arise, from crowdsourcing, from members of your team, from stakeholders. Because when you deploy, you are never, ever going to know as much after deployment as during. Even if your product's been used for years, like Khan Academy, there are constantly ideas that keep coming up. You want to make it easy to test those ideas out. And eventually, you might start to phase in that, okay, C is looking like it's the best. And they start giving it to 100% of people. But I want to caution, this is the dumb Joseph of 2014. In the Mooklet software infrastructure, the way we built it now, based on past mistakes, you always allow people to bring those back. Because you might think, for example, that explanation C is working well because it's very engaging for students. But then you realize actually, explanation A was actually helpful for a subset of students. We just didn't realize it at the time. So you always need to be able to bring back original ideas and test out whether for a particular user segment or particular context, it could be useful. Does that make sense? Let's take them, but I may not answer them, but just say them. Question? Does that make it Bayesian? There's a reason I'm professor in statistics. Bayesian statistics is a big part of what we do, but we also believe in hypothesis testing. We try to meld Bayesian and frequentist. Is there built-in clustering of the user segment? So that's what we did in 2015 and 16. But here's the problem. Any idea you put in will not survive the real world. So yes, we build in some default methods, but we also provide APIs so that you can pipe new ideas in. Like there's some really fantastic researchers at Harvard who did this and they put it in, but then we realized like 6 months later, they need another algorithm. But what do? Do you redeploy the entire code base, the entire front-end course? Well, obviously you're not going to do that. But with the Mooklet framework, we've adjusted it. So you have the appropriate abstractions so that the method you use to cluster or deliver is separate. So if we deploy using yours, and then she had a better idea, she would simply say, here's my better idea. I upload it, I test it, and then we can actually compare yours against hers. So you can keep improving your method for clustering users. You can keep changing your metrics as well. For example, you might say, we're only in marketing, we're focusing on just like lead generation. But we realize what leads to good lead generation actually makes people churn more a month from now. You need systems that will let you change those metrics. The best example, misinformation on Facebook. If Facebook optimizes for clicks, misinformation is rampant. They need a delayed metric, right? Is this changing people's behavior? Is it causing an issue? Can experts look at it? So you need to allow people to change the algorithms they're using at any point in time, and also change the metrics they're using as well. So does that make sense? You keep doing and testing until every student's doing it 100%, or until your product is perfect. So you know when you're going to stop. Never. Here's a really good illustration. So here's a really good illustration of the problem with a one-size-fits-all approach. Imagine a scenario where we are giving people messages. And the idea is that we're giving people a message like, why didn't you generate a question about what you just learned? It will help you learn. Self-focused framing tells someone, do it because it helps you. Peer-focused framing, P-E-R, we're trying to say peer, but I'm trying to say peer. Peer-focused framing is saying, generate a question because it helps your peer. But let's look at the data. We're looking now on peer versus self. And we're looking at actually, what's the proportion of people who generate a question? Well, it looks actually like 0.54 versus 0.42 under the standard errors. You might think, well, actually, 54% of people generate a question with peer-focused, and 42% with self-focused. So we're done, right? Just give everyone peer-focused messaging. What's wrong with that approach? Why? It doesn't identify context. And very concretely, here's another way of segmenting users. Let's look at people who are low accuracy. So people who got previous problems incorrect. They're only 20% of the population. In this scenario, only 20% of students get previous problems with low accuracy. 80% of them, previous problems, they had high accuracy. So I'll say that again. If you segment by whether students are lower accuracy, because they got previous problems wrong, or higher accuracy, because they got them right, 80% of students are higher accuracy. Well, that's great. Except, what is that hiding from us? There are two groups, right? And on average, peer-focused looks better than self-focused. And that's because the big group, 80% of students who are higher accuracy, that's true. If you're doing well, then peer-focused messaging to generate a question is going to make you generate it 60% of the time versus 40%. But what's happening for students who are lower accuracy? What message is going to get them to generate a question? And why might that be? Exactly. And here's the biggest problem. That would have been hidden by just looking at what's on average, by just relying on just either quantitative metrics or qualitative, because qualitative is even more misleading. If I taught and 10 students came and told me, Joseph, I love those peer-focused prompts, and one came and said, I like self-focused, I would have stopped, right? But that's why you need a software infrastructure and you need the conceptual framework to know, experiment and keep experimenting to figure out if they're people you have to personalize to. And you see why that's especially bad for a statistical minority. Because if you're a statistical minority, it's being hidden.
How do you pick the accuracy threshold?
That's a hard problem. How do you pick the accuracy threshold? So those are all open research questions. And that's why you need to actually have the capacity of a framework that lets you keep testing on different algorithms and deploying them. In this particular scenario, we were lucky, right? Because below 50%, above 50% worked. But that won't always be the case. And just think, in your products and services, suppose one data scientist chose the accuracy threshold that wasn't good, and you missed this population. Well, then you've got false knowledge. You've got misinformation spreading throughout your company. You need a software framework that lets you say, that person at this point in time, Mary or Bob, on June 15th did thing, and here's what they did. And then 6 months later, you say, actually, let's rerun that. So you need actually that data provenance, and you need a framework that lets you then redeploy it to test it out. And that's why the way we do A/B experiments, I think, is totally misleading, because we're not harnessing the full power. We can't assume we actually know the best answer. We have to keep testing and testing, even things we think are true.
Student outcome, student learning inclusion is sort of very clear and you're optimizing for that. But in a business setting, if there's just one objective you're meeting, which is say you want to target the higher priority customers or just that, and profit is the only sort of metric you're optimizing for, then sort of excluding the lower priority ones would make sense, right?
So that's a decision you make in your context, who you want to exclude, and who you want to prioritize. But I think the challenge is if you're not doing A/B testing at all, that decision is being made by a hippo, highest paid person's opinion, or some random person who's in the room at that point in time. So what you want is you want a principled framework for like segmenting users and seeing what's working. Like it may be okay in your setting, but you need to actually be able to say, here's 10 ways of segmenting users. Here's how much weight I place on each of them. And then you're like, well, if I test it out, oh, I'm making a good decision. Because the challenges that may be happening, but honestly, as a scientist, like I just assume everything I believe with 99% probability is probably more like 80%. So I'm constantly experimenting, testing my beliefs. For example, I would not have supposed I could electric unicycle around a talk. Maybe I should go and give this, next time I give a talk at Stanford or Harvard. Maybe it's going to go down great. I would never have guessed that was a good idea. So you have to keep testing your ideas and always being intellectually humble. And that's why I love A/B experiments. I don't have a choice. When I run an experiment, I am humbled. I can't tell you how many things me and other people have said, let's not even run it. It's guaranteed to be better. We run it for like, well, that was embarrassing.
All right, thanks. So it's kind of like an extension of the question, but how would you decide the N to include that experiment?
Yeah, how you decide the end of an experiment. These are great questions. Honestly, these are open research questions. I'm gonna give you an answer, but understand there's like 10 different ways. If you have decided you put enough resources into something, like you only want to spend 5 more hours coming up with content, analyzing data, then I would, for a business, I think that's your criteria. At that point in time, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to recognize that my decision is only 80% correct, but I'm going to do that for now. But here's the thing. There's a word called defeasible. And the idea is you want to be able to reverse your decisions. Maybe a better word is reversible decisions. So the software framework that we built, the Mooklet framework, which you all can take and use however you want, it allows you to reverse those decisions later. Like you might decide, it turns out that actually, when I deployed this ChatGPT and I tested out what the first question was, how can I help you today? Or tell me what you're excited about learning about my product. B was better. But then have a software framework where 2 months later, when someone else has time, they can come in, they can change B to C or D. So you make a decision, but you allow it to be reversible in the future. So you need a system that actually tracks your decisions and allows you to, with like 10 seconds, swap that over to something else. Does that make sense? Am I on time? Great. So here's how it looks like in your personalization. You might start at 50-50 self versus peer. And then over time, you might change 55-45, 30-70. So that's kind of over time learning what's better. And the advantage is actually you can keep running experiments long periods of time to figure out what works for who. And that's where you might end up. But again, that's where you end when you had enough resources invested. But have a system like the Mooklet that lets you come back and change it later. And so I think I want to prompt you all, what are scenarios where we decide option B is better than option A? Because it seems like it's better for most students, but we might be hurting a minority. It's an even bigger problem when you use qualitative data from experience, because maybe the people you're hurting are actually your customers who would spend tons of money. And here's where we've also done it in chatbots. You have a nice chatbot like this one, and we actually will allow you to test either one against either two. Test from the LLM. The LLM will generate these. It's just not giving them to you. Generate options and A/B test them. Figure out how you can personalize and enhance. Another example is what we do on prompt engineering. So this experiment, you can Google it or look on my website. exploring the design of prompts for applying GPT-3 based chatbots. It was for mental well-being, but we ran a super experiment where we had 3 different experiments on the prompts themselves. So it was a prompt that went to GPT. We varied the identity, we varied the intent, and we varied the behavior. As we deployed this on scale to experimentally manipulate the prompt. So instead of doing prompt engineering by trying lots of stuff and using your judgment, which I can tell you is highly misleading, run an A/B experiment to actually test your prompts out, test your prompts on different dimensions, and then deploy that on Mechanical Turk and see what the actual impact is on real people. Does that make sense? How you can do a better job with prompt engineering by using randomized experiments that use psychology and other principles and deploying it with people, Mechanical Turk or other sources before you then do a product launch. And again, it's that easy with LLMs. Give me 3 different explanations for how to solve this problem. And it will generate those options. So you can have a way of generating tons of ideas for A/B testing. Or take those ideas and put human beings in the loop. Give them to your product teams or other people to make their own versions. Great. So to wrap up the XPRIZE talk, we had this vision, right? Do you all now see how can we transform any resource into an intelligent agent that's like our best teachers? Do you all understand how any resource implemented as a MOOClet can enable this perpetual enhancement and personalization? Is it clear how we try to integrate collective human intelligence, many ideas from many people, with artificial intelligence to test out and discover what's working for who in what context? And some examples you can apply to your own business problems. Where do you have to test out explanations? In online resources, websites, apps, what you say to people. When you have to send emails, we send emails to help students manage stress, but you might have to send emails to calm down a customer, to communicate with a manager, to communicate with an employee. And especially with all that chatbot craze, I don't think it's gonna reach its potential unless people are implementing super experimentation into every piece of the chatbot, constantly using reinforcement learning to improve and enhance what's being said at what point in time. Because we want to provide tools to democratize experimentation. Anyone here should be able to do experiments qualitatively, quantitatively. Like that app I showed you. In 10 seconds, you should be able to take a bit of content and start experimenting with it. And that's the key idea behind adaptive experiments, where you can keep improving and testing over time. You can have methods for segmenting users, for stopping experiments, but you need software that lets you go back and change those. So we've done this education, mental health, but I think there are many other areas. And for the XPRIZE stuff, I would love to hear more from people. It's just decades of work. So if you have advice on journalism and social media, how do we get the word out about the XPRIZE win, about what we're doing so people will actually be able to give us advice and help like bring this technology so any teacher can use it, any mental health practitioner, any business. Philanthropy. We want advice and collaborators to start a nonprofit that's focused on super experimentation for social good. Education, mental health, misinformation, financial saving, where there's people who can help us like get the word out, software engineers who want to help give open source contributions. If you just want to review these ideas or explanations by giving students, you can always volunteer your time. And commercialization, which I assume many of you are interested in. So do you want to use our software on a framework in mature businesses or startups or for consulting? Then feel free to reach out or tell me more. And so thanks in advance for sharing this. And you can email or post online about why you think everyone could support this work. That's the website there, and you can always share some information or tell me, Joseph, why don't you send me some posts I can A/B test to share with friends? Great, so thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, we are getting very, very close to time, but let's take 2 questions, and then Joseph will also make himself available after when we go to the bar. Yeah.
Sorry, just before the questions, I just realized I should. So I'll prompt everyone again, same prompts at the start. What are everyday business problems you might want to solve? You can type JQ in here, or you can send me a LinkedIn or email message. And what are problems you wish we could solve with like AI, psychology? It could be advertising, marketing, communication, reflection. What are things you do that you think work, but actually experiments that show you don't? How can you be more efficient? How do you incorporate AI like LLMs, enhance what you and others are doing? What can be outsourced? What has to be augmented? And if you have any other questions, feel free to follow me.
Hi, Jonathan. I got a question for you. What would you personally do with a backdoor to the NSA?
That's a good question. Okay, let me think about that while the next person asks that question.
Yeah, thanks for the great talk. You focus on two options. How about more than two?
Yes. Do I focus on two options? I shouldn't be that explicit. I always mean as many as you want. So A/B is just simple, but I could also say A/B-N testing. Maybe I should say that. I'll do that next time. A/B-N testing. So testing as many options as you want. These methods apply very broadly.
You want to answer the NSA question or?
And then NSA.
Oh, yeah.
My question was about how do you isolate like the particular variables you're testing so that you're sure that nothing else is actually affecting kind of like if it's a sunny day, that's why they're passing their test, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the question is, how do you isolate the causal variables you're testing? For example, you might think, well, it turns out that actually, what's a good business example? So you might think that, you send customers emails saying, how was your day? ? And then you make your requests for them to do something. And you might have figured out, you might have thought, well, asking how is your day seems to actually work really well. But turns out there was some other variable. Like you said, it was a sunny day, but also often like you send the emails always at 9 a.m. in the morning. And that is just a time they happen to like getting emails. So how do you figure that out? What I would say is that's always an issue, but it's a bigger issue for non-A/B experiments. For example, it's a big issue with quality of data. It's a big issue with a lot of the data science and most data scientists do. Because like you all know the Nobel Prize in economics, Guido Immons won that this year. And I was just talking to him last week at Stanford. And his entire field of research is basically for causal inference. How do you get experimental data, causal inference without experiments? Because that was so impactful, because it's such a hard problem. Most data scientists are doing that. They're like, look, there's this correlation here. These emails that say, how was your day? Always get sales. And they haven't realized, wait, they all sent at 9 a.m. in the morning. So I would say that is a big problem because those people are not Guido Immons, right? And they probably don't have him working for them. With experiments, you're a bit safer because if you randomize people to get how was your day or not, what would you find? Turns out it makes no difference at 9 a.m. in the morning. But then you might think, why don't I randomize saying at 9 a.m. or 12 p.m.? And then you can discover, wait, here's this big uplift and change. Does that make sense how that is those causal connections are a huge issue, but they're mostly for the stuff that most businesses are doing. I have a ton of data, find me some insights. They will find you something for sure. But those correlations are misleading, whereas experiments are safer because you can experimentally test what you think is happening, find it has no effect, and they're like, wait, there's something else going on.
Okay, I'm sorry. We really gotta go. We really gotta go. But Joseph is gonna be available, and you can ask him questions. I have some questions, but yeah, give a round of applause. That was awesome. Amazing. Just final housekeeping. Oh, actually, can we go back to the? Okay. Yeah, so the next meetup is going to be July 13th at AWS. I think just give me a second. Right after this, I'll open the invite, or we'll make it live, and you can sign up. Just go to our meetup group, and you'll be able to get in. And yeah, and then Infrastructs as well. Sorry, Infrastructs and AWS are going to be hosting our next meetup at the AWS office, and it's not as huge space. So if you really want to come, then you should sign up now. And yeah, thank you to Nasim. She's here, sitting right over there. She helped us put together a survey. And, actually one of the hardest things about A/B testing, maybe the hardest thing, is getting feedback, right? Getting feedback is really difficult. So if you want to share your thoughts on whether the unicycle enhanced your experience of this, of Joseph's talk, then feel free to go to the survey here. Actually, I don't see anybody pulling out their phones right now. Yeah. Pull up your phones. Come on, help us out. This really helps us get feedback and helps us do the next event. And also, there's a prize, guys. There's a prize. You like money, right? You like free money? Sorry. We'll send it in an email to attendees in the next day. But yeah, remember last time when we had a survey and we said we were going to do a raffle for $25 Amazon gift card. Well, we did that raffle, and I guess oh yeah, I should have done a drum roll or something. Anyways, is there a Nicole Zhang here? No, not here. Okay, I'll email her. But anyways, get the survey going, fill it up, send us your feedback, and you will be entered in to win a prize, $25. And yeah, I think that is it. So we got to get out of here. We're gonna get kicked out. So we're gonna go to the bar. Which one are we going to again? The plate. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go. So wrap your stuff up, get your last slice of pizza, and then we're gonna head out.
Do you mind if can I get a picture and send to my Glab? Okay, it's a selfie. That's fine.